This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
It's a pleasure. My name is Dr. Fred, and I've been doing these podcasts, interviewing some of the most spectacular people on the earth, for which you are probably one of those. Welcome to Humanity is about that. It's about finding the spectacular nature in any and all human beings. And I'm just pick out the samples of people in the world who I find to be spectacular, interesting, compelling, and extraordinary. And it turns out that nearly every person on the planet actually meets that basic criteria. But today, we have an amazing guest. This is a man who I have really just come to know within the last 1 year. And he was introduced to me by a mutual friend. We may get a moment or two to speak about that interesting relationship that the three of us found out that we had. And he's a man who's, among other things, the way I met him is he was a resource for learning how to, or for being taught, or being facilitator, or being led to speaking gigs, or led to keynote speaking opportunities. So his name is Tim David. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you so much, Fred.
It's really, really a deep pleasure to have you here. Every time I do an interview with somebody that I admire, it's like, wow, look at me having my own radio show with someone that I admire as my guest. So it's just a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for showing up.
Well, that's a great world we live in right now.
It really is. It really is. Oh my goodness. So let me give my listener just a brief look at your bio, and then we can launch right into our conversation. Does that sound all right?
Sounds great to me.
Okay. So Tim is, among many other things, Tim is an ex-magician who then became an author and writes about the science of human connection. Tim's written a book called The Magic Words, The Science and Secrets Behind 7 Words That Motivate, Engage, and Influence, and exposes the influential impact of words that we often overlook. He then has a second book called Flip, The 4 Levels of Influencing People. You see, that's an acronym. Revealed that true influence comes from true human connection. And now he has a most recent book called The 7-Day Digital Diet, How to Use Your Phone Less and Live More, and explores the biggest threat to human connection that the world has ever seen. And I guess we can probably guess what that is, and how to overcome it. So Tim, that's really just I get it that those are 3 major things that you're responsible for, but that is really, as you mentioned, just the tip of the iceberg of who you are as a person. And I find that in these interviews, we get to learn a little bit more through these conversations of who you are as a human and what you're doing. What are you doing here? What's your point? Like, what's your function? So before we dive into today's conversation with Tim David, I thought I'd take a minute to let you know that, well, my book is totally complete. And it's not only complete in writing, but it's also complete as an audiobook. It's called The Creative 8, and it teaches a really easy method for healing that utilizes creativity and self-expression primarily. Because you're listening to this Welcome to Humanity podcast, I'm going to give you a completely free copy of this audiobook as a big thank you for being a member of the show. And all you need to do is go to welcometohumanity.net/creative to download it. I've used this Creative 8 pretty effectively with psychiatric patients, coaching clients, and now with friends. The method takes less than 5 minutes, actually at least 3 minutes per day. And it really works. No kidding. You're definitely going to love it. Take a look. Download your free copy of the Creative 8 audiobook today at welcometohumanity.net/creative. Now, let's get on to our conversation with Tim David. And so, again, welcome to the show. My listeners are also welcoming you and really eager to find out what you're up to. So, Tim, what are you up to?
Yeah, first of all, I just love the concept of this show. You know, a lot of times people look at people as almost like a commodity, like they fill a certain role in their lives. They are a customer or an employee, or, you know, they just sort of have this label to them. But I like how you're diving deeper and really getting to know people and discovering that really no matter who it is, as you get to know people, doors start opening up and you start to learn amazing things about them and realize that, it is an incredible thing, certainly, to be human. So, I just wanted to kind of affirm
Indeed.
this show, and I love the concept.
Beautiful. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And it seems to me like you might have bypassed the question. I hope you were thinking about it. And that question really was, what the heck are you doing here, Tim? Like, what are you doing right these days with the world? And what are you up to? Yeah.
Certainly not looking to dodge the question. I think that is a question that
I know. I'm just teasing you, of course.
No, I think it's honestly, truthfully, I think it's a question that I've often looked to dodge. And I think a lot of people think that is a good, hard question. What are you doing here? What's the purpose? What's the meaning of your life? Man, oh man, books have been written, decades have been spent mulling over and thinking and meditating and praying and figuring these things out for each of us as individuals. Some people try to figure it out for everybody else. But, the truth is, for me as an author, I really see a theme for all of my books, but each one of my books is sort of a step in the journey, and I think that as I choose writing projects, I base the writing project based on that question. What am I doing, not here in this whole earth and my whole life, but what am I doing next? What is this thing that is going to consume my mind and my energy and my output and my creativity for the next 2-3 years? Because simply that's the lifespan, the life cycle, I should say, of researching and writing and compiling and interviewing and the whole process of putting a book together. I want to make sure that's something I'm going to be fascinated by. And the thread that runs through all of my work to this point really does boil down to 2 words. So that long-winded answer gets us down to 2 words. Why am I here? Human connection.
I figured those were the 2 words. Thank you, Tim. I totally get that. That's what I was guessing. I was like, I hope those are the 2 words you put together right here.
Go figure. And interestingly, I'm not the only one. I think if you look into the grant study, the Harvard grant study, which is the single most extensive human research study, longitudinal study of all time, it is running now almost 90 years. They took a group of people, they followed them, hundreds of people, they followed them around their whole lives, and they invested $20 million into this project. They measured every single imaginable thing that you could measure, and then they tried to look for correlation. What leads to success in business? What leads to success in life, in marriage, in relationships? What is the secret sauce? What makes sort of people tick? And the director of the Harvard grant study recently, said, his name is George Vallon, he said, the results are in. The results are in. Connection is the whole shooting match, full stop, period, end of sentence. So, I think it doesn't take Harvard University for us to realize the importance of human connection, but it's nice to know that the science sort of backs it up. And we're seeing it right now, Fred. We're in this time, as we're recording this, that the world is on pause, and we've removed those social interactions, and we're creating this social distance. And I know you're on the front lines dealing with how that is affecting people, and it's difficult. So take away human connection, bad things happen. Increase human connection, pour more in, and good things tend to happen.
That's really great. Sometimes you don't know what you've got till it's gone, and it's really possible here that in this process where we start, losing our human connection, we're not able to assemble, not even able to recognize a person behind a mask, not able to be next to someone or to even shake their hand, or let alone hug them or kiss them or hang out with them at restaurants or in any type of public gathering. And, we're really starting to get that without that connection, there's something very, very fundamentally critical that seems to be missing. And so I think that's what you're pointing to. And one of the things that I think we share, I've never had this conversation with you, so I'm completely turned on, is that the center of Welcome to Humanity is the notion that the only prerequisite for healing is human connection. Just to let you know, really seriously, that's what we have. This isn't like one of a few. It is the only prerequisite for any form of healing is human connection. And so that's just the premise that we work with on this side of the aisle as well. So it's really it's no wonder that we came together, and we certainly don't differ in really respecting that as being the central component of what it is for us humans to be human. I mean, this
Yeah.
is what it is. It's a matter of being social animals and connected.
Yeah, they say great minds think alike, and I think a big part of that. I think a big part of that reason is because great minds sometimes stumble on the same truth.
Yeah.
Sometimes stumble on the same truth, looking at it through a different lens. Sometimes stumble on that truth from a different vantage point. But at the end of the day, like I said, between you, me, and Harvard University, we have all kind of discovered this in many ways on our own with the help of a lot of other people. But life experience affirms it. Life experience backs it up for me. And one of the things that I did last year, Fred, was I took the year to volunteer at a suicide prevention hotline. And the reason I did it was recommended to me by Chris Voss during an interview for my second book.
Oh, really?
And Chris Voss.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, he wrote Never Split the Difference. He's an FBI negotiator. And
yeah, I know him. I see him in another group that he has come up a lot in my life in the last year. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and a lot of people's lives. I mean, he's killing it right now, and certainly making a massive impact. But he talks about, you think about police work and hardened criminals, and how are you going to connect with those people? And some of the strategies that he teaches are these universal connection strategies for negotiation. So, that alone is an interesting little tidbit that human connection is there's a direct correlation to the bottom line of business, be it a negotiation, be it a salesmanship and a leadership across the board. Once again, increase human connection, good things happen, even when it comes to money and things that most people would view as objective or not airy-fairy like this human connection thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he said, yeah, go ahead and, if you want empathy training, volunteer at a suicide prevention hotline. And I thought, being a guy who researches and writes this stuff, and, I have 3 kids, and I was a stage performer as a magician for 8 years, and really thought I knew how to connect and how to empathize. And I had taken all these psychology courses. And so, but then you go and you do it, and you hear these people's stories, and you learn about the 90% listening, 10% speaking strategy. And that is you don't talk people off the ledge. You don't talk someone out of suicide. You listen them out of suicide.
That's just brilliant. Oh,
and that
goodness.
is such a truism. Once again, you can draw a straight line to that exact principle in sales. You don't talk people into a sale. You listen them into a sale. You don't talk your children into doing something that you want them to do. You listen them into it. So this is certainly, like I said, a valuable lesson that I took from that. But as a byproduct, listening to people and what their issues were, you know what it boiled down to? Loneliness, lack of connection, relationships breaking down, isolation. And it got people to a place, when you remove those things, when you remove the human connection, it got people to a place where they didn't want to live anymore. So seeing that from all these different angles and places, it's such an indelible mark on my whole being, the importance of this. I'm happy to be here to help you shout that from the rooftops.
That's really wonderful. There's a couple things that you bring up that are amazing, Tim. And one of them is, in the world of being connected, perhaps the biggest tool that I have, having been a person who never was short on speaking all the way from kindergarten, probably before kindergarten forward, pretty precocious with speaking and pretty unstoppable in what I thought I had to say. What I'm really learning over the last decade and paying attention to it is that my real tool to alter conversations does not come from my speaking. Not at all, actually. And while I'm speaking, it turns out I can't listen to anybody. But in the world of listening, like really hearing what someone else is up to, really hearing what is working and what's not working for them, like really getting what their world looks like from inside of them, and really having it be that it resonates over here as a listener. It's almost like listening is being used as a synonym for being connected. Can you speak to that? I mean, it's like human connection using listening as your vehicle. That's what I'm hearing you at least touch on.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between what we should do and how we should do it. So if connection is what we should do, how do we go about doing that? Is it simply a matter of listening more? And, I think true connection comes from this place of people feeling seen, people feeling heard, people feeling valued, people feeling like that they resonate or you resonate with them, that you get them. And that certainly, another friend of mine is a man by the name of Julian Treasure, and he wrote a book called How to Be Heard. And it's interesting that a huge portion of that book is how to hear. And, I'm looking at the book on the shelf, and it dawns on me as we're speaking here that if you're going to spell that word heard, if you want to get to that place, you've got to spell hear. You've got to hear them before you can be heard. And I think he finds it interesting. And he talks about the fact that he is all about listening and helping people to listen, but nobody really wants to hear that message. So the title of his book is How to Be Heard, because that's what people want. And he's sort of delivering that, what they need to be heard through his ideas and philosophies about listening. And man, oh man, does this world need more people to be listening right now versus shouting over each other and trying to be heard. So again, just another person maybe your listeners would look into. He's got, books and courses and things like that.
And say his name again. Tim?
Julian Treasure. He's had 5 TED Talks, and one of them has over 100 million views.
100 million?
I think he's the number 6 top most viewed TED Talk of all time.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to check him out too. Thank you for giving his name.
Guess what the title of it is? Yeah. How to speak so that people want to listen.
Oh, that's
the
so
title
funny.
of his TED Talk. How to speak so that people want to listen to you. And once again, the real message is listen to them.
That's so great. One of the things that, again, I'm thinking, oh yeah, Tim, if you look at what I'm doing with my life, one of the things or several other things that I'm doing, and really when I went into psychiatry back in the Stone Age there in 1988, I even knew I was going to be a psychiatrist in 1980 when I first got my mental health job. And even before that, when I was a teenager, I had this idea that listening and being connected was really where it was at. And I really did. And each and every day that I get more fundamental, like more, foundational training, like in the world of being an authentic radical listener, like I'm getting bona fide training in that particular topic each and every day from mentors, global mentors who are committed to assisting me in learning how to listen and learning how to listen even more effectively. I start thinking, well, what's in the way? What's in the way? What was in the way before I became at least a marginally adequate listener? What was I unable to see or do that was in the way of me becoming anything close to a radical, authentic listener? Like, what was in the way? And I think that what I'm coming up with here on First Slice Through is that I get caught up in my own ideas. I'd fall for the trick that you needed to hear what it is I had to say soon. And I have a problem, and unless I unload it on you, it's going to stick in my head as the only thing that's worth paying attention to. So for instance, if I'm busy doing other things or busy in my head being concerned with other things having to do with me that remain unresolved or remain bouncing around this noggin of mine, then truly listening seems like it might not be as available because I'm too caught up with some incompletion with my own life that seems to get in the way of caring even for an instant what you or anybody else has to say. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what's in the way of people. Like, we all know that it's worth listening. It's way safer to listen than speak. After all, you can't get into that much trouble listening. And you can say some pretty stupid stuff, and people do, including me, frequently. But listening and truly listening is kind of a cool space to watch from or to be connected to. We all know that. What gets in the way of people listening?
Well, I think the first and most obvious answer, and then make sure I get to my sort of 4 complete answers. But the first initial answer is the idea that we are locked in our heads, deciding what am I going to say next, or thinking about what do I want from this interaction. So there's a selfish focus that gets in the way of listening, be it, what am I going to say or what do I want from this interaction? The other piece to that, and it's interesting.
Hold on while I take notes so I can figure out what I'm going to say.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the other piece to it, as an author, I write primarily nonfiction. I haven't released any fiction works, but I believe that story is a powerful teacher, and I think that there are lessons in all works, fiction or nonfiction. It's learning opportunities. So, as a new way to engage readers, I explored this idea of writing a fiction book. So I take these classes and I have this mentor and he's teaching me this and teaching me that. And he says the difference between a good guy and a bad guy, you think about, there's so much that you could think about, but there is one essential difference between a good guy and a bad guy when you're writing these characters. How do you make it so that this person's good, and how do you make it so that this person's bad? Because there's a lot of gray areas, there's a lot of ethical viewpoints and like I said, philosophies, and who's right, who's wrong, who's good, who's bad. So I'll leave that as a little bit of a teaser, because I'm going to answer that when I get to the fourth sort of full answer to the question of how do we listen, what gets in the way of listening, how do we truly connect with people. Okay. We mentioned listening as a piece of that, but let's get tactical. Let's talk specifics here. And maybe it would be a good time to take notes for you, maybe for your listeners as well. But this is coming from, this is from my second book. I really explored this question. How do we create this true influence? How do we move people to action? Because many times, once again, that is a motivation. A salesperson wants to make a sale. A leader needs to motivate and inspire their team. A parent needs to inspire their children not to take drugs or not to engage in texting and driving or whatever. So what is that key component of influence? And that's where the 4 levels sort of influence come from. But again, during our conversation, I see that these are 4 levels of listening, because influence and listening, again, are so closely related that I think this will be really, really helpful.
It's really interesting to get that influence and connection are completely intimately interdependent or interrelated directly with listening. I think that's what we're getting to today.
Exactly. That influence almost is connection, or connection is a huge component of influence, and on it goes. You use the word radical authentic listening or authentic radical listening. Chris Voss uses tactical empathy. And I love this idea that these are skills. And a lot of people think empathy, that's just something you have or you don't have. That's something you have to be authentic and really, genuinely care about this person and blah, blah, blah. But truth is, again, these are skills that you can do on purpose, even when you don't feel like it. So here they are. The first, and it spells a word, true, True, because I think this is what true influence comes from, right? So these 4 components. T stands for technique. These are the words you say, the actions you do. This is where people get really hung up. They want to know, especially if they read magic words, for example, what are the exact words that I need to say? What's the exact technique? What's the magic phrase that I can use to get someone to do this, X, Y, or Z? Body language courses. How do I stand? How do I speak effective body language to convey the exact power pose that I want to do here? And, so people very often get wrapped up in technique. There is no shortage of techniques, and they are important, but at the same time, they're not the most important. So that's a piece of the puzzle. So as we're listening, how do we do that? How do we tilt our head? What are the techniques that we're using? What are the specific prompt questions that we're asking? And I think one of the most valuable things that I have from my time with the Samaritans and doing the suicide prevention hotline is the list of prompt questions that I came up with over the course of speaking with people, and just we called it steering into the skid. A lot of people want to avoid those emotional areas, but having good prompt questions that prompt good quality sort of discussion. So those are techniques. R stands for relationship. Now, you can mess up techniques, all of them, just about. But if you have a strong, solid relationship and you look at someone and you just say, do it for me, there you go, right? So if you have a good, solid relationship with this person, they're going to feel more heard by your listening than someone just off the street who doesn't have a relationship with you. If Oprah goes on television and says, buy this book from my book club, you have you feel like you have a relationship, like like, and trust this person. In fact, all things being equal is a truism for business. All things being equal, people will do business with who they know, who they like, and who they trust. That relationship component trumps your advertising and your marketing campaigns. That relationship component is more important than techniques. These are tiers on a hierarchy. These are not just four separate things. They build off each other and even trump each other.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before.
Guess what, by the way? All things not being equal, people do business with who they know, who they like, and who they trust. Your mom, a mother is going to buy the Girl Scout cookies from the daughter, even though she can get those cookies cheaper at Walmart. All things not being equal, relationship trumps. And then the next two are where we really get into some of these listening components that you can kind of work on your listening game. The U in the word true, so the third tier, stands for understanding. How well do you understand this person? And understanding, Fred, I don't know about you, but the more I learn about psychology, the more I learn about how the mind works and who we are as a species, the less angry I get at people.
Isn't that true? It's so great.
Right?
It's so great, Tim.
I almost kind of give up my ability to get angry at people when I understand them. And
isn't that great? It really is.
It is. It's great for my own sort of sense of peace and my own sense of stress and anxiety. I feel like as understanding goes up, stress comes down. Think about it. You get cut off on the highway and you're angry and you're having road rage. And then you realize, oh, there's a woman in the passenger seat giving birth and they're on their way to the hospital. Of course, they're speeding and driving crazy. Maybe they shouldn't be driving recklessly, but, driving to get to where they need to be. And when you have that understanding, suddenly the anger goes away and it's, yes, go, please go in front of me, get yourself to the hospital.
Yeah, you're really getting in this understanding or discovering for yourself anyways about what another person or what people are about. You can really get that something like I've heard people say, I would do exactly what they do if I was them. Like if I saw the world through their eyes, my next move would have been the exact same move they made. And I would be them if I was them is kind of what I'm saying. And one of the things, boy, oh boy, in the lockdown or the stay at home, I get an opportunity to really learn more and more of what people are made of. Doing these house visits, like house calls, like virtual house calls into these homes that have never been house called into. I really get to see, and the families really get to see who each other is in a new light. And it's really like all of a sudden, a lot of the anger and tension seems to dissipate because people are sort of forced to learn how to understand each other. It's pretty remarkable.
It took a couple of weeks at this household right here, Fred. It took us a couple of years. We have 3 kids. One of them is a 5-year-old boy that has more energy than your typical 5-year-old boy and requires more attention and is more demanding, on his parents than most 5-year-old boys. But and we also have a 13-year-old teenage girl and a 10-year-old girl who doesn't always get along with the 13-year-old. So we have, and normally
you have some dynamics.
Yeah, normally they're in school and I'm here at work and I'm writing peacefully. And now, my home has been invaded with my family. But it took a couple of weeks to really sort of get to the place. And I will tell you this, my son did drive me crazy until I got to the place where I would allow myself to sort of be selfless and focus on him and his needs. And when I did that, he was a delight. Not to say I gave him everything he needed or everything he wanted, but that moment when I said, you know what, I'm not going to get this chapter written. I'm not going to finish this chapter today. It's just not going to happen. We're going to operate in flex mode and that's going to be okay. I'm going to take that as a positive and pour into this relationship with my kids and my wife and my family and make time for that because maybe I didn't make it. Maybe I didn't make the time for it. Time has been made for it for me. So that's again, it took a couple of weeks to get to that place where I felt like that switch had been flipped and we really got that understanding.
Beautiful.
So that unfortunately took a couple of weeks. Again, it's sometimes, man, you wish you could just give yourself advice and take it, and that would be that. But learning doesn't always work that way. So anyway, long story short, that is number or tier 3 of listening, is really understanding people.
Let me shine a little light on this. Basically, what I hear you saying, Tim David, is that you took some time to actually be compassionate or listen to in the world of creating relationship with your 5-year-old previously hellion child who has just got way more energy than other 5-year-olds are, is driving you nuts and wants, and in the way. And in that transformation, you became someone who was really curious about him and making yourself available. My guess is through listening to him in ways that perhaps you never had done before.
One of the techniques they talk a lot about for parenting, or for when I was a magician, I was a children's performer. So I spent a lot of time in preschools and schools, and heard a lot about and talked to a lot of teachers. And one of the things they talk about a lot is to just simply get down on one knee and go eye to eye with that child. Mm-hmm. And think of that as a metaphor. You kind of just get down and put your full focus on this person, and your perspective just physically becomes their perspective, and theirs becomes yours, and there's that connection that happens. So interesting how sort of that is like a little physical representation of understanding and connection. So really quickly, understanding human beings and the human brain is important. I talk to my daughter a lot about the animal brain, and the sort of frontal part of our brain, and our sort of cognitive selves, and our rational brain, and how they are sometimes in conflict. And so understanding the human brain and understanding others is a piece of understanding, but also we also have subsets. It's not just one human. It's not enough just to understand people in general. If you're traveling overseas, you got to understand that culture before you go in. Maybe if you're traveling overseas and then you get to that country and then you go and you interact with a certain company, a certain organization who operates in that country. Well, now you got to understand sort of that culture, that tribe within their culture, and kind of get down to another level. So, Fred, I could understand you based on the fact that you're a human. I can understand you based on the fact that you are an American. I could understand you based on the fact that you are a psychiatrist, right? So those kind of groups get me down, but that's still not good enough, because now I'm just stereotyping you. It is the true understanding comes when you understand the individual, mm-hmm. and their idiosyncrasies, et cetera. So that's sort of if you think of a bullseye, you can get close to the target the closer you get, but to truly hit that bullseye, you gotta take the time to understand that individual. So that's where, again, your listening comes in. So the final one, sort of been teasing it a little bit here, but the E in the word true for this hierarchy of listening and understanding and connecting and influencing one another is the word ethics. And I think that it was surprising for me to understand the impact and the importance of ethics. But remember what I said, there's a difference between a good guy and a bad guy in a story, and it boils down to one thing. And the teacher told me this. He said, a good guy is selflessly motivated, and a bad guy is selfishly motivated. The end. End of sentence, end of story. That is how you differentiate good guys from bad guys.
Wow.
So this idea of ethics creating more understanding and more listening, what does that mean? That means at its most basic level, it's the fundamental difficulty and challenge and hurdle. It comes back to, can I be selfless with this person right now?
Yeah. So that's really interesting. And I know we've been pounding on this particular topic, but I'm going to bring it back here and speak to the notion that in the world of speaking and listening, if those are the two required forms for communication to be transmitted, it seems that speaking lands in the selfish side of this dichotomy, whereas listening lands in the selfless side of this particular interdynamic. So I know when I'm listening curiously, with wonder, with interest, from an unknown, without, as much as I can, without all the cliches, without all the categorizations, that I'm doing something that seems to me to be selfless, or less selfish anyways, than when I think I got something brilliant to say and then I'm going to roll it out and use your time and my time to do so. That feels selfish anyways to that side of center. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you said it as maybe as efficiently as it can be said.
Thank you. All right, yay me. And so talk a little bit about, we're really saying selfish and selfless as how does this work into, is there anything more you want to say about the ethical component of this quadrant?
Yeah, Adam Grant wrote a book called Give and Take, and he categorizes three people: either you're a giver, you're a taker, or you're a matcher. And when he looks at the sort of success components in business, do nice guys really finish last? So he measured and was able to assess whether they're givers, takers, or matchers, not more so than just asking, hey, are you a giver or not? He had a way to identify them. And then he looked at their results and he followed them over time and he figured out, hey, you know what? If we're looking at the success ladder, whatever that means to you, but in business, be it money or leadership or whatever, who's at the top of the success ladder? Or rather, who's at the bottom of the success ladder is the givers, the people who are doormats. They give so much that they don't have anything left over for themselves. So the people at the top of the food chain in the world of business is the givers again. The givers who give selflessly in a way, but also sustainably, right? Because one of the things that is true is that we have finite resources. We have finite time, finite energy. And if you're giving, those resources will be depleted. And you cannot make as much of an impact on other people if you just blitz and give and drain those resources. So part of giving and part of ethical giving is this smart, intentional, recharging. And where does all that come from? That comes from the connection and interplay within relationships. So the ethics idea, giving, taking, matching, selfish, or selfless, I think once again, can you put yourself in that place where, hey, I want to focus on this person and their needs, and I have my needs, and I have my fires that I need to put out, and I have my emergencies that I feel are very pressing. I'm going to set that to the side and focus on this. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's what ethics boils down to. Not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a selfish standpoint. This is what I would have done unto me, so I'm going to do it to you because this is what I want. I think the true intention behind that golden rule is to do unto others as they want to be done unto. And if you really think about it, I mean, if you, the truth is, they both work. If I say do unto others as you would have them do unto you, well, guess how you would have them do unto you? The way that you want to be done unto. So I know that's kind of sounds maybe a little bit like word salad or kind of confusing of different pronouns.
No, not at all.
I don't want anybody to think or feel that I'm disagreeing with the golden rule. Not at all. I think sometimes we need to practice the golden rule a little better, and the way to do that is to kind of clarify and understand that it is about what they want, and it's not about what we want.
Well, that's interesting. If we start looking at this idea, I really love what you said about the bottom and top, both being the givers, and that the difference be the sustainable aspect of what it means to be on top sustainably. And I think what you're saying is just give is going to be, that's like just withdraw. And then in the end, you're depleted and you're bankrupt. And in the world of this, so you can be too nice in some ways. You can be too giving, and then you're at the bottom of the food chain. You get eaten up for lunch by the people above you. And then there's something it's really true. The top of the food chain, there's again a new level of being there for others. There's a new level of, in fact, being selfless that tends to show up at the top of the food chain for those really the moguls who have figured out how to be effective on the top of the chain are givers as well. And it's in that word sustainability that I wonder about the give and take balance maybe that you're talking about, that there's an opportunity that it's important to take here so that you can keep your account balanced, because if you're going to keep giving, there has to be a space where you're replenishing yourself so that you not only are giving, but getting enough out of the relationship and out of your world that you can continue to give endlessly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a difficult balance for a lot of people. In addition to, I mean, the word ethics, again, like I said, it's a gray area for a lot of people. When I was writing this book, my focus was, exclusively not on the idea of ethics for the sake of ethics, not on the idea of ethics for the sake of a philosophical debate, but rather, do ethics help you or hurt you? Do strong, good sort of moral qualities that most people would agree are moral qualities, don't kill each other, be nice to each other, show kindness, be fair, do those things help or do they hurt? Now, in the short term, the research also shows that in the short term, takers win. They can
Right.
get that sale by talking people into it and convincing them, even though it's not the best thing for them. So yeah, in the short term, takers win. Long term, once again, givers rise to the top. Now, the question is, are we playing a long term game or are we playing a short term game? And the answer is, in life, man, oh man, when does the game end? I think Simon Sinek just put out a book called The Infinite Game. And it's true in business. It's not just how do we get to this quarter? One of the biggest frustrations that I have about business right now is the focus on quarterly numbers and how short-sighted that makes people in their decision making and sometimes in their ethics. So I think when we view things as a long game, I think that's another way to help our decision making. And that's not easy for human beings to do. Our evolution has gotten us to a place where we see immediate threats. We respond to immediate threats, this fight or flight. It's difficult to look long term as human beings. But that's one of the things that I believe will get us and keep us at the top of the food chain, both in business and in life.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate what you're saying about like the quarterly numbers or, our focus on that. And it leads me a little bit into what a question that we'd like to ask our guests here on Welcome to Humanity, which is and we briefed you on it. And earlier, I think Ryan sent you a copy of this, but it's something like, what's going on in the world that really does, given who you are and given the stand you're taking, which is just massive, by the way, and beautiful, totally inspiring. Like, who doesn't want to be Tim David's friend? I mean, it's just like, who doesn't want to know more about what this man is up to? It's just like there's a calmness, a humanity, a willingness to look square down the barrel, an interest in what human nature is, a vulnerability, fatherhood, and all the things that you really probably don't even know you present yourself as. It's really wonderful, Tim. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yes. And along with looking at quarterly numbers as being something that's just obnoxious, there's this other question, which is, what's going on in the world that really bothers you? Something in the world that's off, something that gives you a twinge, something that you really wish. I mean, if you had to resolve or fix something right now, what would that be? And I know that the answer you gave us a little bit moves away from this, but I think we can really tie up a lot of what we've been talking about with your answer to this question. Like, what is it, Tim? Like, what is it? I got it that you got all this stuff in your way and stuff that you're creating, but what about this world really, really bums you out right now? And what are you doing to alter it?
Yeah, I think the most frustrating part of all this is that we know that human connection is a priority. If I were to ask you, hey, you're laying on your deathbed right now, you got minutes to live here. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about, I did a presentation for a group of people who provide palliative care. Okay, they run hospice centers. They take care of people who are in that situation. They're about to die. And they tell me things like, Tim, your message about human connection was spot on, because at the end of our lives, you know what people don't say when with their dying breath? They don't say, hey, can you go back into my office at work? My college degree is hanging on my wall. Can you go grab it? I just want to hug it one last time. They don't think about their accomplishments in that moment. They don't say, hey, can you wheel me into the garage so I can sit in my dream car for a few more minutes before I die? Nope. It's not about possessions. They don't say, hey, one more day at the office, please, one more day at work. That's all I want. Although maybe now with COVID, I know a lot of people are like, please get me back to the office. But in that moment, when hindsight is 2020, when you're looking back on your life, people don't think about those things with that crystal clear lens of clarity. People think about the relationships that they've made, and they think about the relationships that they've neglected. It is the single most important thing, and we know it. We don't need Harvard to tell us. You don't need Tim David or Fred Moss to tell us that human connection is the secret sauce of life and it is what matters. So what really bothers me is not just that we're not doing it, it's that we know better and we're still not doing it. We have invested tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, decades of life, books written, all kinds of momentum, and people are still, chasing a buck. People are still stressed out about stupid crap. So what bothers me, and now with this sort of, we live in a unique point in history where this confluence of technology and innovation, and everybody's walking around with a device in our pocket that allows me to swipe left, unfriend.
Oh, I have it in front of me all the time. I don't put it in my pocket.
Yeah, right. It's always in your hand, in your face, glowing. Right.
Yeah, in my hand. Look.
So
I never thought of that. I think I'll start putting it in my pocket. What a great idea. Okay. Good. Anyways, please continue.
So we have this thing that was designed to help connect us even better, to be able to, and truth be told, as a result of these devices, the quantity of human connection has skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
We have the ability, even though we're in this shelter-in-place, quarantine, stay home, stay safe world, we now have Zoom and FaceTime and Google Meet or whatever the technology is that allows us to have a dose of connection. And that's great. I can speak to my cousin in Switzerland at the push of a button, and I'm here in the United States. So it's great, and I'm not saying we all need to go full Amish and throw our phones in the river because I'm a Luddite or whatever. But at the same time, as the quantity of human connection has gone up, we've noticed that the quality has come down. And, I point a lot to a graph of human empathy over the last 30 years. And this graph was compiled and created by a woman named Sarah Conrath, who is a research psychologist, and she looked at over 14,000. It was a meta-analysis of all these different studies that have been done. And the graph will shock you, and you'll have to sit down when you see it. It is such a sharp decline. And the correlation between 2008, 2009, which is where the biggest drop-off happens, and also the same time when social media really became prevalent in our lives. So, I think that there is some, to that. Like, I wonder if the fact that I am looking at a device instead of looking at the person in front of us is helping our human connection or hurting our human connection. One of my favorite quotes is attributed to Einstein. He didn't actually say it. I'm not even sure who did, but he says, "I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots."
Right.
Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I feel, and this is not directed at any one generation, by like millennial or Gen X or Gen Y. What he meant by that quote was just the generation of time, the people who are occupying the earth at this period of time, that generation. Because grandma's playing Candy Crush and whatever else she's doing on her phone just as much as any millennial that you know. So I think that's the biggest frustration, is seeing all of this amazing, wonderful technology, all of this incredible knowledge and wisdom, and we just can't seem to put the two together. We just can't seem to sync it up. Technology companies, the people who develop these apps, are so good, and they have the science and the understanding of human beings to be able to create these addictive devices that, quite frankly, are designed on purpose to be addictive because their metrics and their numbers aren't your happiness and your well-being. Their metrics and their numbers and their sort of quarterly, numbers that they're looking to hit is user engagement. Eyeballs on screen. The CEO of Netflix says, our biggest competitor is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
We want you. That's why they autoplay the next video. You don't even get a chance. It's just, here's the next episode when you're binge watching these TV shows. So once again, the developers of these devices and technologies, not all of them, right? Not all of them, but the goal is to keep you glued to the screen. And I don't know about you, but the best stories in life almost never start with, so, hey, I was staring at my phone, right? And guess what happened? The real moments of life are being filtered. They're diffusing, they're spreading out and losing the richness and the texture and the sort of sensuality of it. And it's turning our experiences into these just commodities, these things that just need to be, I just need to document it. I need to put an Instagram post about it. There, now I had an experience. So, I mean, I know every generation says that the technology that is coming down the pike is dangerous. Heck, Socrates was talking bad about books. Oh, books, kids today and their books. It's gonna dilute how people think. Radio, television, everything has been sort of viewed as this thing that is going to curse the whole generation. I get that. And I'm not taking the stance that we need to do away with the devices. What I am taking a stance in is the root of all of those things throughout history. And that is, what are our choices, right? We've been given this gift of technology. What is the choice of how we're going to use it? We have this really great tool. Let's say we have a hammer. Am I going to use this hammer to attack you? Or am I going to use this hammer to build a school or a hospital? Once again, cell phones, nothing good or bad about them. They're just tools. And that's sort of the, you asked, I like the way you phrased the question, what irks you? And then, man, oh man, I bet people just like that go on a rant. And, so I'll kind of rein it in. I'll rein myself in a little bit. But I will say this, it's the distance between what we know and what we do. The distance between what we know and what we do.
Yeah, thank you. It seems to me like, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but given what you're writing about in a 7-day digital diet, and given what you've said now about our devices, that when you state in your bio that it's, the biggest threat to human connection that the world has ever seen and how to overcome it, that you're likely speaking to this electronic form of communication or this electronic form of, I guess communication would be a word to use here, and that when misused, it is the biggest threat. Am I right in making that assumption, or is there something else you want to attach to that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would probably reword or add to the idea that, once again, the devices themselves are not the threat. And I think that's what's different, about this book, that, because there's a lot of books out there about how to digital detox and how to break up with your phone and how to no longer be a slave to your technology. And, let's all smash our devices and go device free for a week and do whatever it is. Like, I don't believe that's the approach. I think they're approaching the symptom versus the root of the problem. And the root of the problem and the biggest threat to human connection is simply our desire to not connect, our desire to be heard instead of to hear. And that desire is magnified and enabled by these devices. But man, oh man, we can't blame the devices. The devices are not the issue or the problem. And if we try to remove the devices, first of all, never going to happen. Technology is here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle. We're not going back to, the time of the Renaissance or whatever, when, unless there's some crazy EMP pulse that destroys them all in one. But, regardless, we're not going to do that on our own. And we shouldn't. This technology is awesome. We're using it right now, Fred, to have an awesome conversation.
We sure are. We are.
So the device is not the problem. The device is not the issue. It is not a matter of eliminating it. It's simply a matter of, like, here's how Nir Eyal says it. He wrote a book called Indistractable. He says, yeah, your devices are distracting you. Okay. But what are they distracting you from?
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that, traction is the opposite of distraction. And how can we move towards what we want instead of being pulled into this? I mean, I'm sure you've all had the experience. All of your listeners have had the experience of logging onto Facebook or going onto YouTube or using your device and scrolling through content and realizing hour later, oh my gosh, what just happened? I went to go and check my email, and now it's 45 minutes later, and I went into some weird vortex of time. So yes, our devices are distracting, but once again, it's not the device's fault. We don't have that thing that we're moving towards, and that thing that we're moving towards should be each other.
Isn't that great? It's really great. And it really, I always hesitate when I either hear or say the word should, like we should. I always like, at least it makes me, I feel like evolve to the point of getting, the word should. And then I get, no, actually, Tim, you're right. And when it comes down to it, it's we do know. We do know. Really, all of us, we really know. We really know that human connection is at the center of the universe. We really know that the whole purpose for living is based on human connection. We really do know.
Now, hold on a second. There are some listeners who would argue vehemently with that and say, well, no, it's about faith. It's about, my religion. It's about this. And let's take that for what it's worth, because, at the heart of many religions and faith-based practices is the idea of love thy neighbor. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And connecting with other people is a thread that runs through a lot of religious practices as well. So, I'm really only familiar sort of with the Christian religion, and Jesus talks about, hey, you wanna love me, love my people. You want to feed me and take care of me, take care of my sheep. And there's verbiage in other religions as well that really are pointing back to the importance of, hey, take care of each other, care for each other, connect with one another, listen to each other, hear one another, serve one another. I think that's you're right. We do know, and we can look at it as fact and operate under the assumption that human connection is fact. And if you know something but don't do it, what does that what does that make us? Fred, I like this exercise. I want all your listeners to do it right now. I want you to think of something that you believe deeply that you're wrong about. We can all say, I'm not perfect and I'm not right about everything and I'm wrong about some things, but I want you to tell me what things you're wrong about. Give me one thing that you're wrong about, and most people can't come up with anything, right? Because if I believe it, I don't think it's wrong. You know what I mean? So this is something that we can look at and say, yeah, no, we know this is right. And it's not just me. It's science and it's religion, and it's everybody's kind of pointing us to this idea of human connection. Let's practice it, right? Let's do it. Let's follow through.
Yeah. I think we're really, I think if we do a sequel to this conversation, and we will, of course, personally, and maybe back on air in one direction or another, I think this whole idea of, for me, where my interest lies is, even though we know it and then don't do it, my next question or my next query, my next inquiry about it is, okay, well, we must have something that is either too frightening or too something or another. We have some sort of payoff in actually not doing it. Otherwise, we would do it, of course. And the reason we don't do it is what? And that's when, okay, because I'm caught up in my own self, or maybe I'm afraid you're not going to like me, or that I'm afraid I'm going to say something that will cause damage, or, I don't, well, it isn't even saying, right? It's in listening. It's like, what is it about the human connection? I'm so curious, and frankly, Tim, just to be honest, it's what drove me to mental health the whole time. It's like, what gets in the way of the very obvious notion that all healing is requires human connection, social interaction, effective communication between one and at least one other person. And how could we rightfully make a decision not to head in that direction? And I'm just curious about it, because I, like all other people, it seems, often make a decision not to go in that direction. What drives that? It's beautiful. Beautiful question.
Yeah, it is a great question. And it's easy to point the finger. It's easy to judge. It's easy to look at other people who seem to be prioritizing other things over human connection, be it money or the score on their video game. So But at the same time, what is it and how is it? And it's not easy to define. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that make it a difficult thing to do, to focus on human connection. And not least of which is, how about the fear of rejection? You try to connect with somebody and they don't want to connect with you. Oh my gosh. So there are a million and one factors. So certainly I'm speaking in a way that is intentionally provocative here, but at the same time, the understanding extends to this as well, about why people don't connect. Maybe it's just a matter of being distracted, and we're fallible human beings and we are distractible. And sometimes we get pulled into worrying about something that is less important than what we could and maybe even should be worried about.
Awesome. All right. Well, Tim, it's been a pleasure truly connecting, or at least giving a good shot at a good college effort at connecting with you this afternoon. It's just been an amazing conversation that has me looking at all sorts of corners of little places that we left each other off that I'm going to be exploring this weekend and probably further on. I'm a changed man after having this conversation with you, quite honestly. And so I love connecting with you, and I really have appreciated this conversation, digging in as promised, right? Digging in deeper than either of us have gone with each other before, and exploring the spectacular nature of what it means to be human and what it means to be both me or your friend or your colleague, or what it means, what works and what doesn't, what directions can we go, what's so extraordinary about this life we're living. And lo and behold, man, we are living an extraordinary life in an extraordinary time. And I think that for sure is just unquestionable.
Agreed. Ryan was right, man. Ryan was right. I'll have to give it to him. He said, because he knows you and he knows me, and he saw all the overlapping areas, and he said, you guys are going to have an amazing conversation. We certainly, you and I, we stayed high level. We didn't, but I think a lot of the important stuff happens at that high level, and we don't get a chance very often to zoom out and really look at issues like this and concerns like this, especially in a time right now when human connection and social distancing and all that is so prevalent and so on the forefront of everybody's mind. So, I love that we had this conversation, and I wish we could have, 100 more to go into the weeds and to really nerd out on this stuff and how we can do it better and how we can apply it in all different areas of life.
Well, I have all sorts of ideas that I'd love to talk with you offline about, but I think we could probably make this happen. The technology is around to continue to tweak the people around us and not write them off for not being interested or too distracted or unwilling or, not enough time or all of that, and really get that maybe this is a time to launch a methodology that gets others and myself and you and others focused, interested. Maybe, in other words, we're back to, you don't know what you've lost till it's gone. And, or you don't know what you've got till it's gone, I believe Joni Mitchell said anyways. And you have the idea that maybe there's something here while some of these things are being seemingly fundamentally threatened in our present state of affairs. All right. Well, beautiful. So this has been Tim David. Tim, I met you through this getspeakinggigs.com gig that you run. And so would you like to tell my listeners how, if they want to follow you or learn a little bit more about you, connect with you, watch you, those kinds of things, how might they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think for our conversation today, I think people, if they want to dive into the weeds, like I mentioned, if they want to nerd out and really continue the conversation, but get down to that practical level, I think the best place to start is goodatpeople.com. And that's a site where, I give you my best stuff for free. We talk a lot about this thing called connection and what we can do about it in a very practical way. That's where you can find my books. Really excited about this new one. I mean, imagine if you could just take a week, just a week, and do a couple of things every day for a week and get back a huge percentage of your time. I have this, I created this calculator. You can go in, and most phones will track how much time you spend per day on your device. The average teenager, by the way, is staring at a screen for about 7.5 hours per day. And if you extrapolate that adds up to almost 30 years of their life. It's 29.28 years of their life, which is basically a prison sentence for murder. It is the average lifespan of a human being during the Renaissance. It is a huge chunk of time. And, if you could just reduce that by an hour or an hour and a half and get it to a place, even if you're only spending 4 hours a day looking at a screen, if you could just take a week and refocus and reorient and do a little bit of work up front and get some of our time back and our priorities and connect once again better on a deeper level with those people and maybe even those things and hobbies that are more important to us. That's what really excites me. So yeah, all that stuff you can probably, I'm assuming there's links through goodatpeople.com or 7daydigitaldiet.com. And I'm going to continue to sort of do my work and fight the good fight, if you will, of empowering and equipping people to better connect with one another. I truly believe it's time well spent.
Awesome. Really beautiful. Well, thanks for using your skills in this conversation today. It has been a deep and honorable pleasure to be with you. And I'm sure my listeners will agree that it's been an extraordinary conversation. So we're going to taper off now, Tim. I'm going to send you on your way for a weekend. It's Friday afternoon here. It is May 1st. As I look out over the air in Los Angeles out my window here, it appears to be a gorgeous day. It's an opportunity to take a walk. It's an opportunity to connect with others. It's an opportunity to hug your family or to go find out what they're up to. Or how about even calling a friend and truly listening to what it is they had to say or what they have to say, or maybe even something that you disagreed with or something you didn't understand. Like you could actually call somebody or even, who knows, take a walk with them if they live with you. And really practice some of these skills that Tim's talked about inside of creating relationship, inside of understanding, inside of, using techniques at work, inside of really being with another person. And I think that's really what we've been focusing on. It's been wonderful. So Tim, David, thank you so much for being on our Welcome to Humanity podcast. And we'll talk to you soon. I believe we have an appointment sometime early next week anyways. I really, 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 really have enjoyed speaking with you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. And thank you for practicing what you preach, Fred. And I look forward to speaking with you soon.
All right. Awesome. Tim, David, thank you, listeners. And thank you. Welcome to Humanity. This is, you've been through another wonderful episode of Welcome to Humanity podcast broadcast. This is Dr. Fred Moss, and I am the owner and founder of Welcome to Humanity, among a few other brands. And it's a deep pleasure to transmit this podcast to you, whether you're listening to it this month, next month, or next year, or sometime in the future. It sure has been a pleasure speaking with Tim David and being connected to you in one way or another. So I do invite you to go find ways to connect to other people, because that might be at the heart of what it means to be human. Welcome to Humanity, folks. Thanks for being on the call. We'll check you around the backside. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciated my conversation with Tim today, because he's just so brilliant and so easy to talk to and speaks the language of everyone. And he's just so thoughtful that he's really taken a look at so many things about humanity and the human connection. What a great man. What a great fun interview that was today. And maybe while you were listening, you were thinking, yeah, I know somebody who could really, really use hearing this interview. Go ahead and reach out to them now and invite them to listen and to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast. And I'd like to ask you a favor as well. Why don't you subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast by hitting that little button on your podcast player? I guarantee you the latest episodes as they become available. And if you appreciate what we're doing here, just take a few minutes and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I and my team and all the listeners would be totally grateful for your support. Also, if you want to catch up on the past episodes, head on over to welcometohumanity.net/podcast. And until next time, this is Dr. Fred. It's been the Welcome to Humanity podcast broadcast, and it's been really fun. Thank you for listening. Take care.